on, but then you went too far. When your ship has sailed and all your dreams are lost, everything is wrong, you feel like it's your fault. Just remember, I will be there for you, baby. Remember, there's nothing out there to get you, don't forget it. When life feels lemons, just call on me. Just call on me. Just call on me. Just call on me. You're stronger now than you ever been. You gotta leave now, it's time to catch the wind. You will climb up high and look through the clouds. And when you're feeling low, I know you'll bounce back. Oh, and just remember, I will be there for you, baby. Remember, there's nothing out there to get you, don't forget it. When life throws lemons, just call on me. Just call on me. Just call on me. Just call on me.
From Austin, Texas, the Dowel eSports and Simulators Tuesday Night NASCAR Truck Series is ready to go road course racing here at the Circuit of the Americas. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to COTA right here in the Lone Star State. I'm Dave Regal here in the Sim Racing Media broadcast booth, and we're glad to be with you this evening. We thank you for making us a part of your evening. As last night in the Xfinity Series, we got to see some really exciting racing, and hopefully we get to see that once again this evening. As just so often we see a lot of these races kind of take on a life of their own, and you can see tonight here at COTA just how different of a racetrack this is. In fact, we'll go out here to a little bit of a wider view. We talked about it last night in the Xfinity Series. We'll talk about it again this evening. You can see that this road course is very long. It's fat on one end, it's thin on the other. Almost looks like a Liberty Bell here at the bottom, right here in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. And, one of the things that we talk about is most of the time stock car drivers, or in this case stock truck drivers, turn left. And, you get into a rhythm, if you will. And now at a place like COTA, there just is none. And we're going to check in here with Brandon Minto in the number 12 U.S. Air Force Chevrolet Silverado. He is just getting ready to start his second lap as he's going to bring it through the carousel turn here. We can see the way that he's working the carousel. Very gentle, very smooth here on the wheel. As we'll see if we can get that qualifying mode up and rolling. There we are. And we can see Minto here in the 12 completing that first lap, and he goes fastest at 2 minutes 17 seconds, but all of a sudden he's passed by Gabriel Lafreniere. Lafreniere, one of our neighbors to the north, he's out here in the 06 Oxymore Ford F-150. And I'll tell you what, last night Lafreniere put on quite a show battling it out in the Xfinity Series, and tonight I expect nothing but the best from him, as right now he's running a total of 2:15.8. Sylvain Joly, of course, another one of his fellow countrymen there from Canada, running P2 right now. We can see that. Steve Herring in the 89 machine. He's going out to get his first bites at the racetrack. He's about to finish that first lap. We can see it now completed. And it looks like he may have stepped off track during that, so it negates that first lap. Want to welcome everyone into our YouTube live feed. Of course, I see Mr. Alexander Gangler giving a shout out here. We'll go see what the 82 machine's up to in that beautiful Tide Downy Toyota Tundra, and it looks like he gets a little bit of a wheel wiggle here as he's about halfway through the second lap. Went 7th fastest on his first lap, and now he's going here to try to nail one down. Of course, Mr. Gangler, well known for his race control abilities on Sunday Night NASCAR's Cup Series. Of course, also available here on Sim Racing Media. And, you know, just something that we talk about all so often. You know, a lot of times for guys like Alexander and myself, we spend more time in a broadcast booth or in a race control tower than we do on track. So for him to be out here and logging these laps, and especially to be 7th fastest, that's looking good for him. About 3 minutes left in qualifying, as there are still several drivers who have yet to get out on track, including McAdoo, Pennsylvania's very own John Wilco, waiting to see the pride of McAdoo out here to get out on track. Of course, I only just learned last night that he's from my home state here in Pennsylvania. Looks like Gabriel Lafreniere hopping out of the car here. So he will stick with that 2 minutes 15 seconds .8. Sylvain still here in the 08. He's not going to make the second lap faster, as we can see that now. Eugenio Alonso, you know, a lot of the international drivers, almost just like in real life NASCAR, atop the pile right now, as we see Gabriel Lafreniere, Sylvain Joly, and Eugenio Alonso from, of course, our friendly neighbors to the south in Buenos Aires. The three of them up there. The only international driver not up top right now, or not there in that top 3 or 4, is Claude Ferdlin, and he's still up in the top 5. So once again, it seems like the drivers that are most used to driving right and turning right are going to do well tonight. Alexander Gangler finishing his qualifying effort. He winds up netting 10th position as Dan Morgan in the 80 machine, that Black Bullet Chevrolet Silverado, he's still trying to complete a clean lap as the first lap was negated. So we'll see what this is going to bring him here, as we're going to see coming out of that final turn back onto the front stretch, Dan Morgan. And of course, while we have a few moments here, we're going to take a look at our point standings on the season. The Jack Dowel Simulators and eSports Truck Series proudly spending now their first season here on Sim Racing Media. Glad to have them with us. Of course, last year they were over on a different network, and now they've this year decided to come on over. John Ballou leads our point standings right now, with John Bawalda, the chief cook and bottle washer here in the Jack Dowel Motorsports Tuesday Night NASCAR Truck Series. He's running in P2. just 17 points separating those two drivers, with Jeffrey O'Rourke and Claude Ferdlin, with Chris Claude rounding out the top 5. Chris Claude, of course, the commissioner of Sunday Night NASCAR's Cup Series, right here on Sim Racing Media. And, it's something that we've talked about, amongst ourselves here at SRM. But it's nice to be able to be with everybody, let's just say on a regular basis, where we can put these 3 series next to one another. And of course, having me in the broadcast booth 2 nights in a row, we get a little bit of consistency here. We can talk about the things that we saw last night. We can talk about the things that we're going to see coming up next week at Richmond, as it looks like warm-up going to be underway. So while warm-up is underway, we're going to step aside and we're going to pay some bills here on Sim Racing Media. Welcome back to Austin, Texas, where the Jack Dowel Simulators and eSports Tuesday Night NASCAR Truck Series is getting ready to get it underway here at Circuit of the Americas. And just a little bit of a correction there, as I had mentioned a moment ago. I thought that the trucks were going to Richmond next week, but it turns out they're actually going to Texas. So I'm going to stay here in the Lone Star State. But, of course, we on Sunday Night NASCAR will be in Richmond. And let me tell you, short track racing, always something exciting. Of course, the trucks next week at Texas should be super exciting. And hopefully we can see a little bit bigger of a field next week as well. But, you know, don't get me wrong, folks. Road course racing isn't for everyone. And believe me, even sitting here in the broadcast booth, it can get awful scary and awful stressful because, you know, you've got so many different things going on. And we spend a lot of time during the night in replay taking a look at the different things that are going on in and around the racetrack. Right now, Jeff O'Rourke out here just warming up, getting a little bit more of practice with about 5 seconds left in practice. Brandon Minto still trying to sort things out there in the number 12 machine. Eugenio Alonso out getting his warm-up laps complete. And just as I say that, he decides to try to spin her around. Eugenio, you can't back into a win, that's for sure. Eugenio, of course, finishing on the podium last night for the JDM team. And we're going to get ready to go ahead and grid up here as it looks like Gabriel Lafreniere, who leads the field tonight, going to be starting with next to no problem. There we are, folks. Just checking everything here as everybody's getting ready to slide on into the trucks. Gabriel Lafreniere going to be starting on the pole position tonight. Sylvain Joly, Eugenio Alonso going to be your top three with Brandon Minto starting in fourth, it appears. We'll get this right on out of the way as we want to see these beautiful paint schemes before they start to get bumped and banged around this piece. See here. All right. Gabriel Lafreniere going to be leading us off in pole position with Sylvain Joly on his right side on the front row. Row number 2 made up of Brandon Minto and Eugenio Alonso. We're going to be talking about these drivers all night long, believe me, as these 4 drivers, very skilled. Bel Air, Maryland / Willow Grove, Pennsylvania's very own John Bawalda III going to be starting on row number 3 with Claude Ferdland. Here starting in 6th, Chris Claude out of Fairview, Tennessee in the number 10 Dasani Toyota Tundra, going to be starting on row number 4 with Alexander Gangler. Row number 5 made up of Channing Ballou from Pensacola, Florida, and Dan Morgan going to be starting in 10th place right here from Dubuque. Brandon Loomis and Jeff O'Rourke going to be starting row number 6 as Rich Jett and Jeremy Paris going to be starting in row number 7. And starting shotgun on the field here in the final row, going to be McAdoo, Pennsylvania's very own John Wilco in the rolled gold Chevrolet Silverado, with Chris Custer starting shotgun on the field in the Black Bullet number 18 Chevrolet Silverado. So 17 cars going to be taking the green flag tonight. As we get ourselves ready, the green flag waves, and here we go. We're going to be seeing these trucks going through this transition coming up the hill very gingerly tonight as everybody manages to get through there with relative ease. Everybody gets through turn number 1, but meanwhile, Gabriel Lafreniere not wasting any time at all as he dives down toward the S's, leading this parade of NASCAR stock trucks through here. And I just think that this is the only time we're going to see this tonight with everybody snaking through the S's. And what a great shot that is, if I do say so myself. And just as we get out of the S's, we're going to go uphill here. Try to get that pulled up on camera as we head down toward turn number 10. So far, no problems yet. Turn number 12 is going to be our trouble period again tonight. I'm nearly sure of it. As we see these drivers, you can see here on the right side of your screen, it's like a nice, gentle country road, and you get yourselves pretty wound up coming through there as we wait for Gabriel Lafreniere to lead the field through there. Gabriel the fastest through segment 2 here. And we're going to hang out here for just a moment as we make sure that everybody gets through, because believe me, it's entirely possible they don't make it. Steve Herring here bringing up the rear. Looks like he's going to be okay getting through. As we take a look at Eugenio Alonso still being challenged by Sylvain Jolly. And I hope that I'm saying Jolly correctly. I really do. Seems like a really good driver, seems like a very nice guy, but unfortunately I've never had the pleasure of being able to speak with him directly. And if I am pronouncing your name wrong, please forgive me and correct me, as not everybody can be perfect, but here is lap number 1 about to conclude. We see coming down the front stretch, just out of the final turn, past that DRS sign, we see Gabriel Lafreniere going to get credit for leading lap number 1. We'll get that timing tower up here now. With 2 laps, 42 scheduled laps this evening for these trucks, and believe me, these 42 laps are going to be blistering. So far, Gabriel Lafreniere, the fastest in Segment 1 and Segment 2 this evening. Segment 1, he laid down a 23.87 second lead, as he already has a 1.28 second lead over Eugenio Alonso. Very clean race so far this evening. Of course, as I say that, I'm desperately watching the incident board to make sure nothing bad happens, as I don't want to give anybody the broadcaster's curse, if you will. Taking a look right now at Jeremy Paris, who's chasing down Claude Ferdinand here in the 43, nearly making contact as they come up and over the hill, down toward turn number 10. Looks pretty clean right now, and here they come into the trouble turn. Not a whole lot of excitement here. I'm sorry, that is turn number 10. Not a whole lot of excitement so far, but all of a sudden, stepping out goes Jeremy Paris now in the 05, looking to the inside of the 43. Claude perfectly willing to let him go ahead and burn that equipment up. As we're going to see Paris getting a run here, all of a sudden the 42 getting around Brandon Minto. That's Channing Ballou, as Ballou decides to serve a little bit of lunch up here to Brandon Minto. Meanwhile, we just saw there in the other section of your screen the 05 of Jeremy Paris making pretty decent work of Claude Ferdinand. And now he gets around Minto. So Minto dropping back significantly here in the opening laps of this piece at Circuit of the Americas. And folks, that is not a computer error. The 05 just simply doesn't have a sponsor on that truck, except for Chevrolet there on the deck lid above the bed. But so far, a pretty tight three-way battle. And then there were 4. We're going to drop back here to Brandon Minto, turn on the battle box if we can, as this battle for 4th is hotly contested early on in this race. And suddenly I see Steve Herring may have had an issue. We see Steve Herring from our blimp cam just as he's getting ready to come through that almost final turn. And it just looks like maybe he was fighting a little bit of a tight condition here in the 89, but he doesn't crash. Maybe just coming to a darn near complete stop, and that would be exactly what happened. Meanwhile, we're still going back here to this battle for 4th, as these drivers have now separated themselves quite a bit. As now there's about 1 second in front of Minto and more than a second behind him. And still, yet again, as Jeremy Paris is working his way toward Sylvain Jolly, he's got a long way to make up, almost 9 seconds and growing. Quite a battle for the lead here and for second position as this battle for first heating up. Eugenio Alonso now just a little bit more than a half second behind Lafreniere as Jolly is all over the rear bumper of Alonso, and we are going to see some sparks flying and tempers flaring tonight. As we know how talented Eugenio is, of course, out of Buenos Aires. We're going to pull up that beautiful driver info that we know that he's worked so hard on. But these three drivers here, all about getting it done and getting it done early, I guess. As Gabriel Lafreniere would like these two to be fighting it out a little bit more, as he only has a little less than 1 full second over Eugenio Alonso. And he'd really like Alonso and Jolly to, get the hammer and tongs out if they could. As, John Wilco has an issue. A run back here. And meanwhile, back at the ranch, we still have a three-way battle for the lead here. That's something interesting here. I didn't expect to see these drivers going at it this early, but sure enough, here they are. Go back here and see what else is going on. Whoa, looks like Brandon Minto and Jeremy Paris nearly making contact. He gets Paris to tighten up and get out of the way. That's something we're going to have to watch for quite a while, it seems, as Paris going to be chased down by Minto. As Minto quite obviously wants fourth position back. Every point counts, as Jeff O'Rourke also just flashed himself to the pits, so we'll see what might have happened to good old Jeff. Here in the South Park Chevrolet Silverado. Take a look here at the 5 truck. He comes into a troublesome turn 12, brings it all the way around, can't get it woed down, and for reasons beyond my understanding, decides to just take it on in to the pits. So maybe he decided he's logged enough laps here tonight and would just as well go on back and hang out, maybe crack open a couple of beers in the pits with the rest of his team. Want to welcome everyone in watching us live on YouTube, of course, over on Facebook as well. As, we've got one heck of a race going on here tonight at Circuit of the Americas. Dave Regal in the broadcast booth with you as always. We are the exclusive broadcast provider of the Jack Dowel Simulators and eSports iRacing Truck Series here on Tuesday nights. Of course, we've gone through a couple of incarnations of this league, and over the last 3 years, this league has really developed into the juggernaut of driving that it is today. Not often do we see folks, bowing out early, as we just saw with Jeff O'Rourke, who's now going to start going down laps. So not sure if Jeff is going to get some things taken care of. It looks like he's put it on the hauler. Meanwhile, Steve Herring is down pit road, so he may have had some more damage than he thought he got, as Chris Custer also has just registered on the event board. See what's going on with good old Custer. We see him right here in the 18 Silverado. He's got one heck of a head of steam, so I can only imagine what's about to happen here. Oh, you go off track just a little bit. And sometimes, we watched it last night with the Allen brothers, and Bennett Allen, until he had some mechanical issues, was an absolute master at coming through the S's, hitting those turtles, and letting the car settle down in the Xfinity Series. And, right there, Chris Custer not able to get the truck settled down before going back at it. And again, that's something that we talk about all the time. Sometimes on a short track, you're trying to let the suspension settle down because there's a lot of energy built up in that suspension, especially when you're going from a turn onto the straightaway, or vice versa. But most of the time, it's on exit. And a lot of these short road courses, similarly, there's a lot of different energy that's being put on these cars, and in this case, these trucks. In fact, we're going to take a look right here. We'll try to get our little drone cam to float ahead here, as we're going to watch the front here of Lafreniere's 06. You can watch that front splitter floating just barely above the asphalt, and just as he's going to start to slow down, you can see the front splitter bouncing, and it's hitting the asphalt like that, and all of a sudden now he's back on it, and you can see that front splitter picking up off the ground. There's a lot of forces in action here in these trucks, and it's at this point something that we're going to see a lot more of throughout the evening, especially as the tires wear on. I mean, we're only 6 laps in on this piece, and Lafreniere back on the brake again. We can see that splitter hovering just barely above the marbles on the asphalt as he's rolling out now once again. So, like I said, folks, a lot of different forces here. Thank goodness for that drone cam that we're able to float that right ahead of him. I see Troy Brimmer here in the Facebook chat. What's up, buddy? Glad to have you with me. Hang out and watch a race. Eugenio Alonso running in P2 right now, starting to close in a little bit more on Lafreniere, as Lafreniere just about had a full second over him, and now he's quietly closed that to just over 0.8 of a second. So something that we're going to see more and more throughout the evening is, drivers like Alonso are very patient working around this racetrack. We're going to see them, him just laying these laps down, hitting these marks, and a good road course driver will hit the same marks every time. As Brandon Loomis not having a good moment here. Taking a look at the 25, he simply overshoots that exit. Maybe a little bit of a connection issue, and sometimes that's enough to really throw you off your game and your rhythm. And, of course, getting into 12, he turns it all the way around. Fortunately for Alexander Gangler, that was a close one. We'll run that back real quick just to see that from Alexander's point of view, because I'll tell you what, that's something that as a driver, you're watching time and time again. We'll see if we can get this from his nose. As we're going to watch, of course, we see the flashing of the connection there in the 25, and Gangler just barely scooting on past him. But Brandon Loomis able to get back underway, still running in 12th position. Lafreniere, Alonso, Eugenio Alonso starting to challenge Lafreniere as, he forces Lafreniere wide here at 12. I talked about it, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but turn 12 is going to make or break you on this track. I truly mean that. And these three trucks still keeping us entertained thus far. Well, Troy, I'm sorry you're going to have to bail, but I understand the 2 a.m. wake-up call, buddy. But glad to see you in here with us. Of course, over here on the YouTube.com live chat, make sure that you're letting us know who you're pulling for. It looks like Nadi is out here saying, let's go BBR Racing, cheering on Mr. Custer. Letting him know to hit his marks and be smooth. He's got this. Glad to have all of you with us. Make sure that you're subscribing, turning on those bell notifications, and give us a thumbs up. Let us know that you like what you see out here on the racetrack. What your friends and family are doing. Whether on the racetrack, here in the broadcast booth, whatever happens to be your twist. Chris Claude out here, speaking of friends and family, Chris has been one heck of a guy over the last 3 years that I've gotten to know him. And, Chief Cook and Bottle Washer, as I mentioned there, the commish, if you will, of the Sunday Night NASCAR Cup Series. And Chris welcomed me into this league with open arms 3 years ago, and I got to be honest, folks, I haven't looked back. This league is just absolutely great to watch. And, week in and week out, these drivers show up, and Chris is able to put on one heck of a show with this league. Taking a look at Brandon Minto being chased down by Jeremy Paris here from our chopper cam. Here they come yet again at the hairpin. Paris getting a heck of a run there that time on the hairpin. He gets back on the loud pedal as fast as he can. He thinks he's going to have him here. Let's see what happens. As it looks like Paris looking to the inside, maybe trying to take that inside away from Minto. As they come down here into turn 12 once again, looks like Paris drops back a little bit as these two drivers just chasing each other around. This is like watching a couple of kids on the go-kart track. And we're going to see them come into turn 15 here with a full head of steam as they are now side by side doing their best to keep it off one another. And I'll tell you what, that is a challenge in and of itself. Of course, the Ferda Motorsports prodigy here in the 12 machine. Love that paint scheme, too. I remember being a kid at Bilak's Barber Shop over in East Reading. And Mr. Bilak had all of these old, model planes and things hanging from the ceiling. And I always remembered looking at the one that had this paint scheme and thinking to myself that it looked pretty tough, and I was just a little fella then. And even now, that still looks really cool. Looks like Brandon Loomis may have had another incident. We'll run this back, take a look. Loomis in the 25 yet again. Chasing down the 77 of Rich Jett. He gets on the brakes pretty hard, doesn't smoke him just yet. And there he brings around the rear end. And that, of course, can happen more often than not when you're sitting there trying to get back on the throttle, maybe a little bit too soon. And believe me, there is a too soon moment, that's for darn sure. But 9 laps complete of 42 here. We're going to step aside and pay some bills here on Sim Racing Media. I'm Dave Regal. This is the Jack Dowel Simulators and eSports iRacing Truck Series live on SRM.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Welcome back to Austin, Texas, where right now the Jack Dowel Simulators eSports iRacing Truck Series is hot and heavy here with 11 laps in of 42 this evening. Right now taking a look at John Bawalda, who was just exchanging blows with Channing Ballou. You can even see some battle scars on these machines as they were both just hammering at one another. You can even see some scuff marks there on the 42. I'm sure that he can't be completely happy with the way that that truck looks right now. But John Bawalda right now running in 8th position. This is the battle for 7th right now. Pull up that battle box where you can take a look at the time here. Just about 8/10 of a second between Bawalda and Ballou. Almost a full 9/10, and there it is, 9/10 of a second between the two. Take a look up here at the battle for first, and this is probably the closest thing we can see on the track right now, as these three drivers all night so far have just been going at it hammer and tongs. And you know what? That's got to be a lot of fun. It's got to be more fun than when you're sitting, you know, maybe further back in the field. You're kind of all alone. This is kind of what we had talked about after the race last night, myself and Chris Claude. As we had a few minutes with Matt White to talk about matching what the driver in front of you is doing. You know, Chris Claude not finishing so great last night in the Xfinity Series, but one of the things he had said was that when he was alone, he was having more trouble than when he was running with someone because he was able to follow that other driver's line. And right now, you can see Gabriel Lafreniere, who started on the pole tonight, matching Sylvain Jolly step for step. And you know what? Right now for Lafreniere, that's probably not a bad idea. Now, last night, we were able to make, a lot of drivers were able to make this a one-stop race in the Xfinity Series. Not sure if we're going to see that tonight, as, you know, these trucks handle a lot differently. And, you know, once they start losing fuel, you know, sometimes that throws the balance of the truck off significantly enough that you almost need to have a full fuel tank to keep the truck stable as you're turning right and left, going uphill and downhill. It's, you know, COTA is kind of like the Wonka Vader, if you will, of racetracks. You can go front ways and sideways and downways and backways. And eventually you will find that checkered flag, but right now there is a lot going on here, as it looks like Custer going to be the next driver a lap down, as he is behind by 2 minutes altogether here from our lead. Can't really call that a battle for 14th, if you will. Right now, he's just driving to survive. As Eugenio Alonso, your race leader, is laying down times right now of 2 minutes, 18 seconds. So as he's gaining on him now, 2 minutes and 2 seconds, as he's gaining on him in front, technically he's coming up behind. So just 16 seconds thereabouts between Eugenio Alonso and the soon-to-be lap car of Chris Custer. But let's take a look up here at Eugenio, who has now decided to set sail and start hitting his marks. And, you know, last night he finished on the podium in third position after, you know, a dust-up with Matt White early on in the race had moved him down in the standings for the evening. It moved Eugenio up into third and finished him on the podium. So here he is tonight doing very, very well. Evelina Howard out here cheering on Chris Custer as well. And Evelina, listen, Chris is out here doing his very best. And speaking of Chris's, let's take a look at what just happened with Chris Claude here a moment ago. We can see Chris trying to hold off the 77. Nearly a battle with Rich Jett there. And Chris just coming in very hot, hits that curb and just brings him around. And I know that's very frustrating for Chris. And, you know, he and I have talked extensively, you know, off air. And, you know, tonight is all about, for him at least, getting to the end of the race. And believe me, once you see what the playoff picture looks like, you know, come later this season, you'll see exactly what he means by driving to survive. And I mean, you know, right now, Chris, he's got himself a top 10 so far this year in the truck series. Of course, last week, while yours truly was out, in fact, we'll go back there to those latest race results. Last week, while I was out, you saw John Ballou, of course, who was just doing battle with John Bawalda, Channing Ballou doing battle with John Bawalda just a moment ago. He took home the checkered flag last week at Hotlanta. You know, meanwhile, you know, Chris Claude finishing 16th position. But, you know, consistency will get you to the playoffs. I mean, you know, of course, that checkered flag performance will always, you know, stamp that ticket automatically into the playoffs. And I know that it's very early in the season, as, you know, we're only on race number 4 right now. And, you know, I realize that race number 4, you may not be thinking playoffs, but believe me, at this stage in the season, these drivers are still thinking about it. It's definitely something in everybody's mind. Some technical difficulties here with my broadcasting seat, but not the end of the world. And right now, we're going to step aside and let you folks at home turn it up here on Sim Racing Media. Well, Eugenio Alonso making pretty simple work of Dan Morgan here, as now he's going to put John Wilco in the crosshairs here, as Wilco's got a little bit of time between himself and Eugenio, but just about 3 seconds, if you will. As Eugenio Alonso, we can see right here on the timing tower what his last time was. You can see how I figured this out. It's really not that not that easy, or not that hard, I should say. Eugenio Alonso running a 2-minute 20-second.15 lap. And, of course, next driver in the crosshairs, as I had just mentioned, John Wilco running a 2-minute 27.8. So, although that Wilco, at the moment, is 2 minutes 18 seconds behind, that should be evaporated pretty quickly, if you will, as Eugenio Alonso still out here just hitting his marks, doing everything that he needs to do. And the interesting thing that we're going to see here as time goes on tonight is drivers like Eugenio Alonso, he's got a rear view mirror full of Gabriel Lafreniere, and Lafreniere basically isn't using all of that truck right now. I'm fairly certain that Lafreniere has a little bit more in the tank than he's alluding to at the moment, as they're still chasing each other down there like a cat and a dog in a wet paper bag. And Lafreniere, again, still also hitting his marks, but what he's truly doing is he's matching Alonso here step for step. And we can see how Lafreniere and Alonso gingerly getting by John Wilco, and John Wilco, being the respectable driver that he is, gets out of the way and allows them to work their way past. But Sylvain Jolly, he's back here just biding his time, waiting to get around Wilco. But Wilco, possibly related to Roger, and if you missed that one, John Wilco's brother Roger. Get it? Roger Wilco. That's what we're here for, folks. Corny jokes. As we get past the pit boss hairpin turn, Eugenio Alonso still out here logging laps. So nearing that halfway point, so I'm fairly certain we're going to see Eugenio either try to stretch this fuel as far as he can possibly go, or we're going to see him hit that halfway point and dive on down pit road. The question's going to be, who's going to blink? It looks like Brandon Loomis, maybe a couple of laps ago, had another incident. We'll take a look. Definitely not as incident-filled as last night's Xfinity Series was. Of course, fewer drivers means fewer incidents. That's for darn sure, especially when they're not door handle to door handle. A lot of what we're going to see tonight is going to just simply be driver error, maybe overcooking it getting into a turn, or underperforming on exit. And right here at the final turn, looks like Loomis just does a little bit of a pre-celebratory donut. It is pretty dangerous to try to do what he just did, but he manages to pull it off, as, sometimes backing out on the racetrack can cost you. That's for darn sure. And still taking a look once again at Sylvain Jolly, who's back there now 6.5 seconds behind the leader, Eugenio Alonso. And Eugenio is just up here running a clinic on how to get around this piece. And honestly, Eugenio and Gabriel are probably the closest on the timing chart right now. But that being said, let's take a quick run through the field. Buenos Aires' very own Eugenio Alonso. He's out here leading this piece ahead of the Gabriel Lafreniere in the 06 machine here, that F-150. So a pair of blue ovals leading this pack. And our first Toyota running in third position, Sylvain Jolly, back here in the 08. Jeremy Paris out of Flowery Branch has his Silverado, the first bow tie in line here. That 05 with no sponsors on it, but sponsors should probably be taking a look at this young man who is just out here fighting his way tooth and nail through the field. Claude Ferdland in the 43 Toyota Tundra. He's running in fifth position. Channing Ballou in sixth out of Pensacola, Florida. Quite a picture there for Ballou Brandon Mint this league. As a matter of fact, right now it looks like John Bawalda and Rich Jett. Of course, John Bawalda from Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, a native of Bel Air, Maryland, however. Rich Jett, and of course we'll get to him, Mr. John Wilco, who's back in 13th. But Alexander Gangler out of Big Rock, he's exactly where he started, 10th position. And you know what? He may be battling this machine right now, but to me, Gangler is still somebody who deserves all of the respect because he puts the time in. He's doing his very best out here. You can't knock someone who's simply going to start or going to, perhaps finish where he started. Chris Claude out of Fairview, Tennessee, in the number 10 Dasani Toyota Tundra. He's running in 11th position with Brandon Loomis out of Milan, Illinois, running in 12th. John Wilco, of course, as I had mentioned a moment ago, out of McAdoo. He's in the Rolled Gold Silverado. And I'll tell you what, I love me some Rolled Gold pretzels. They are delicious. And a fun fact about Rolled Gold, I was probably about 12, maybe 13. And the first time I had ever been to the Happy Valley out in State College, PA, of course, where Penn State University plays football. My stepdad and my mom had taken me out there. We were going to have a great afternoon watching, I believe it was Penn State hosting Temple. So, of course, it was going to be a bloodbath for Temple. Well, my mom had never been tailgating before, and in the back of her PT Cruiser, as we pulled into the parking lot there, of course, it's a big grass field. My mom opens up the tailgate of her PT Cruiser with a bag of Rolled Gold honey wheat pretzels and says, "I guess we can tailgate with these." And my stepdad looked at her in absolute horror and he says, "Sherry, you don't just tailgate with pretzels." So grossly underprepared as, being 13, I wasn't too well versed in what tailgating was all about. But as we looked around with everybody with their grills and stereos and coolers full of beer, there's Mom with her little bag of pretzels saying, "This is what we're going to tailgate with." So every time I see Rolled Gold on the grocery store shelf, that just triggers that little bit of a memory there. So, and of course, my stepdad having passed away, it'll be 2 years in October. It's just something that always makes me smile just to think of the look on his face because, my goodness, what a day that was. Sylvain Jolly, the first driver here, going down pit road as he's about to be passed by John Wilco. John Wilco still on the lead lap. I'm sorry, not on the lead lap. Dan Morgan running 14th position out of Dubuque in that Black Bullet Chevrolet Silverado. Chris Custer, who's got a little bit of a fan group here in the YouTube.com live feed from Naughty and, of course, Evelina Howard out of Ohio. Of course, there I am talking about Penn State, and now we've got this Buckeye running around out here, but not the end of the world. Steve Herring having put it on the hauler from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and Jeff O'Rourke also putting it on the hauler after just 4 and 3 laps, respectively. So kind of a rough night for them, but who is having a good night? Eugenio Alonso. He's at 23 to go now, so we're just about at that halfway point. He's still being challenged by Gabriel Lafreniere, and Gabriel giving him the business as they come up and over this hill. They are still going to be going at it pretty hot and heavy here as we roll our way through. And now, to keep things into perspective, this track is not technically designed for stock cars and stock trucks in this case. This is more of a Grade 1 FIA spec track. Of course, normally hosting, Grand Prix events, V8 supercars, motorcycle Grand Prix, things like that. So to bring these four-wheeled monsters out here is kind of a different experience, not only for the track itself, but the drivers as well. Or maybe strike that, reverse it. It's different for the drivers and the track as well. Ooh, as Eugenio just barely steps out. Maybe it's time to come on down. There he goes down pit road. Eugenio Alonso going to cede the race lead away from Gabriel Lafreniere. We'll see how long Lafreniere stays out, as Jeremy Paris going to be making some ground up here on Eugenio. But Eugenio still has a 32-second lead over Paris, so we'll see if he can get out still in second position. You see him getting 4 tires in the tank at Go Fast with now 22 to go. He'll make this a one-stop race. Jeremy Paris deciding not to try to get second position away. He'll come down pit road. He had a chance there to maybe take second position away, but knows that Eugenio is just too fast. So Eugenio goes in second, comes out second, and that's something that we do see on the regular here. This is kind of different than our normal pit cycles that we see. As Gabriel Lafreniere in the 06 Oxymore F-150 making his way around just about halfway through lap number 21. As we have 22 to go now. And, of course, Evelina Howard has to let me know that Chris Custer went to OSU. Of course, I believe they call it the Ohio State University. I don't know why there's always that emphasis on the Ohio State, just in case there was another one. I don't think most people even talk about, whether or not it's the Ohio State University of Miami or whatever the deal is. But Evelina Howard highlighting that, of course, there I am trying to make a light joke about Chris Custer being a Buckeye, and he truly is a Buckeye. Dragons are on, giving us a good old hello here. Looks like the Oxymore truck has something in the bed of it, as Gabriel Lafreniere going to be bringing it pit side. Now we're going to see if Eugenio Alonso cycles up into the lead as he closes in here, 28 seconds and counting down. This is going to have to be the fastest pit stop of Gabriel's crew's life here as Chris Claude gets out of the way. 27 seconds now. This could be an interesting decision here. Sylvain Jolly, 35. Alonso is the one that we're watching here. 26 seconds. Does Gabriel have enough? 20 now. Oh, he gets off of pit road. And he gets back out there just as Alonso passes him for the lead. Coming up the hill around that hairpin turn. And we'll see Alonso coming through turn 2. He's going to be chased through the S's now. John Wilco not giving in early. But Eugenio Alonso, once again, your race leader, as Gabriel Lafreniere had a chance to take the lead away from him, but that pit crew just could not react fast enough. Dragon, I appreciate you. There are other colleges that are smaller versions of the original Ohio State University. Of course, quite an interesting program they have there for football. And although here we are in the spring, and of course we've got XFL action and USFL action, we're always looking forward to the NCAA coming back to us in August and September, as well as the National Football League. So football somehow has just absolutely grabbed the mind and heart of almost every American. But as we talk about football, I do have to, make sure that we highlight this. Thursday, so the day after tomorrow, is opening day for Major League Baseball here in the United States. Of course, the excitement's going to begin at 1:05 with an Atlanta Braves versus Washington Nationals matchup at Nationals Park, and the San Francisco Giants going to be hosting the going to be visiting the New York Yankees in the Bronx. So, a lot of excitement this week. Of course, last week during spring training here in Philadelphia, we were all kind of holding our collective breath, and it was all for naught as our pride and joy Rhys Hoskins, of course, a homegrown first baseman, tore his ACL. And folks, I encourage you to check it out on Twitter and Facebook. Of course, you can check my Twitter or my Facebook. That's at Dave Regal SRM or at Dave Regal over on Facebook. But it literally happened right in front of me, and you could hear when he went down the yelp in pain that Rhys Hoskins let out, and it was kind of a scary moment for everybody as we all held our breath to see if he'd get up, and he did, but he definitely got up gingerly to get into the cart that would eventually take him off the field and into what will now be the off season, as his season has ended with this ACL tear. The 05 of Jeremy Paris has some real nose damage here, so not sure what he got into, but it definitely looks like he might have been rooting around there against someone's rear bumper. He makes his way through the S's, takes that last turtle pretty gingerly, but manages not to catch the final one coming out of the S's as he makes his way out down toward the back of the racetrack. But like I said, we may be thinking about baseball or about football, but baseball should absolutely be on your hearts and minds as we go through this week. You know, after this pit cycle had begun, it seems like the battle between Lafreniere and Alonso has cooled off. But right now, oddly enough, Jeremy Paris just landed the fastest time through segment number 4 of the racetrack with a 56.54 second time through that last segment. And Dragon, my favorite baseball team on earth, I bleed little red pinstripes from April all the way through October. If they make it to October, I am a diehard Philadelphia Phillies fan. But I'm sorry, Dragon, that yours are the Astros. I can't. You know what? You won the World Series. Congratulations. So did the Yankees twice against the Phillies and the Blue Jays, but. You know, this one's still a little bit of a fresh wound. To be honest, I don't think the Phillies belonged in the World Series last year. They just simply got hot at the right time, and everything came together when it had to. As Gabriel Lafreniere, hoping that everything doesn't come together with Chris Claude in the way. As Chris seeds away that lap. And now Chris goes down a lap here, as now there were 10 left on the lead lap. But, yeah, the Phillies definitely didn't belong in the World Series last year. Maybe the third wild card, sure. But, you know, it was definitely a surprise. And I'll be honest, it wasn't until very deep into the playoffs where I started to feel that little bit of magic that everybody gets to feel come playoff time. And, you know, will it happen again this year? Probably not. Let's be realistic. I mean, Bryce Harper's on the shelf until probably the All-Star break after he had UCL surgery. And then, of course, Rhys Hoskins, the anchor of the infield, if you will. He, you know, of course, like I just mentioned, blew out the old ACL. Of course, the other day, we had some excitement in spring training. In fact, it was yesterday. If you didn't get a chance to watch it, I'm sure Awful Announcing and Barstool has it available on Twitter. The clip of JT Realmuto, the Phillies starting catcher, getting ejected from a game because he let the umpire drop the ball to the ground on the exchange to get a new ball back to the pitcher. That was a whole new level of I can't believe what I'm watching. You know, umpires in baseball are always afraid of being replaced by robots, and that guy's not really doing a whole lot to change the minds of the people who make those decisions. You know, sure, you want to leave that human element in there, but to be completely honest, he's not really doing well for people's image of umpires. We already think that sports officials are, let's just say, jerks, for lack of a better term. In fact, my personal opinion, as much as I love racing, I think NASCAR officials are probably the worst in all of sports. I always feel like they seem very, very distant while they stand there at the end of the pit box with their arms generally crossed across, in front of their chest, and they're looking at the guys changing tires and filling with fuel and making sure that you don't drop a lug nut or, even if you pass gas in the wrong direction. And, all it takes is that official who's assigned to your pit box to not like somebody, and suddenly you've got a penalty of some persuasion. And of course, sometimes, unfortunately, you even get called to the NASCAR hauler because of an angry official. Oh yeah, Dragon. Listen, some of the calls that I've seen. Yesterday's call, I had made mention of it to a friend of mine in a conversation we were having, and I said, here's what probably happened. The umpire was having a bad day. Here it is, spring training, and he was probably on the phone with his significant other at home, and let's just say that it's his wife, and she says, honey, I don't like you being away this much, and he says, well, listen, it's only spring training. I mean, I still have 162 of these things to go, and she goes, well, that's fine, babe, but the neighbor asked me out to dinner, and he probably took that frustration and anger out on JT in that moment. Brandon Loomis, speaking of getting it wrong, we'll see what happened with him here. There's finally something to replay and run back to. Oh, we see Brandon Loomis blinking out again as he's going into the S's, chased down by John Wilco. And oof. Yeah, boom goes the dynamite. He nearly dirt tracks it. We'll have to see the end, but I want to see what the onus of this was, or what the origin of this was. We'll see if we can get a better angle here. Doesn't look like he and Wilco made contact at all, and it looks like he just went a sliding, if you will. And he just came in on lap 21, and I'm not thinking that that's the cold tire brigade, but Wilco in the meantime definitely had himself a Code Brown moment as he was avoiding Loomis just in front of him. But folks, with 17 to go, we're going to step aside and pay some bills here. I'm Dave Regal. This is the Jack Dowell's Simulators and eSports iRacing Truck Series live on Sim Racing Media. We thank you for making us a part of your evening, and we'll be right back as we go side by side here on SRM.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling. With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Welcome back to Austin, Texas, where Gabriel Lafreniere is now your race leader. Just a few laps ago, in fact, he decided to get around Eugenio Alonso. We're going to take a look at the moment of the pass. We're going to do it here from our blimp cam. And it almost seemed like he had just gotten a run out of this turn 12, as we had seen so many times last night. Gets a run right behind Alonso. Alonso says, you know what? I'll give this to you. I'll let you have it for now. And Eugenio Alonso definitely off the pace now, as he's down by about 2.93 seconds. But Gabriel Lafreniere taking off, if you will, and getting her done. John Bawalda, meanwhile, he had a little bit of an incident as well. And we'll be able to take a look at that right here. Of course, we can see him with the Jack Dowel Motorsports band as he just comes in a little bit too hot, as we've seen so many times this week. He gets it back under control. Just a little bit of a premature victory donut, if you will, and he gets back underway. But that doesn't negate the fact that your race leader is currently Gabriel Lafreniere, our neighbor from the north, if you will, from St. Jude. He's followed by our neighbor from the south in Buenos Aires, Mr. Eugenio Alonso, good friend of mine. Glad to see him out here doing so well tonight, as he had finished on the podium last night. We talked about that earlier. Then Sylvain Jolly, also from Canada, one of our international entrants tonight in his Tundra. He's got that Accent 08 all the way up here into third position and has been holding fairly steady all evening long. Jeremy Paris running in fourth position right now out of Flowery Branch. He's the first bow tie, and then there's a couple of them here. He and Brandon Minto out of Norman, Oklahoma, running in fourth and now fifth for Minto. Claude Furland out here running in sixth position, with Channing Ballou running in seventh position out of Pensacola, Florida. Not our only SNN family of Cup Series drivers from the Florida Panhandle. Of course, the great Ricky Carmichael drives for us on a Monday night in the Xfinity Series out of Tallahassee, Florida. John Bawalda running in eighth position. Rich Jett in the double natural from Schwanksville, PA, running in ninth. Alexander Gangler from Big Rock. He's got the 82 Tide Machine running in 10th, with Chris Claude out of Fairview, Tennessee, running in 11th. John Wilco from McAdoo, PA, in the Roll Gold Silverado. He's in 12th, with Brandon Loomis running in 13th. Dan Morgan and Chris Custer rounding out the drivers still on track, as Steve Herring and Jeff O'Rourke putting it on the hauler early. But, you know, and as dejecting as it may be to be down 2 laps for Custer, or even 1 lap, and looking at more for Dan Morgan, as Dan Morgan's got a rearview mirror full of Gabriel Lafreniere. He doesn't want to go down 2 laps, but he allows Lafreniere to get around him. You know, at this point in the race, you don't want to be the guy. You know, Dragon, that's really cool. Your first ever 164th NASCAR was Ricky Carmichael's Tide car from 2004. And you know what? Got a chance to talk to Ricky a couple of times last season off air, and a couple of times this season. And when you can say that there's a guy that, no matter whether the fact that the word GOAT usually precedes your name, he is a very down-to-earth human being, just a good guy all around. And I'm proud to say that I get to see him race on a regular basis here in the SNN family of racing, even though that it's only on Monday nights there in the Xfinity Series. Didn't see him last night, but hopefully he'll be back for Richmond. You know, Ricky is just a really cool guy. So make sure to tune in on Monday nights. And, of course, all 3 racing series now under one roof here, one broadcasting roof, if you will, here on Sim Racing Media. Of course, the Sunday Night NASCAR Cup Series on Sunday nights. Of course, that kicks off early there at 7:30 green flag on a Sunday night here on Sim Racing Media. You can check in with Matt Mentler and the very great Tony Trapasso, my brother from another mother. They are on the call on a Sunday night. And then on Mondays and Tuesdays, you get me for Xfinity and trucks. And I'll tell you what, the Xfinity series to me is just, bar none, a great league to watch. Those drivers, to me, are among the best that you're going to see on the iRacing.com servers. And believe me, as much time as I've spent here in the broadcast booth, that's probably, top 4, top 5 in the leagues that we see. As we see Lafreniere coming out, we'll watch this lap expectantly here as he's going to come up to turn 1. And, folks, we talked about it several times tonight, but watch Lafreniere as he's going to come down toward turn number 2. As he rolls through 2, now we get to see him come into the S's, and this is just one of those graceful parts of the racetrack. And you really need to have that hand-eye coordination to get through here nicely. And just as he's coming uphill now out of that little valley, he's going to get ready for turn 10, and he's going to come up over top of the hill. We're going to watch all of that energy start to release itself in the springs and then get ready for this hairpin turn. And, of course, we talk about the hairpin, but the next one is the treacherous one here in turn number 12. And just as he gets on past Rich Jett and puts Rich down, this is the turn where we saw a lot of action last night in the Xfinity Series. We're going to see the 06 come down this nice, graceful ride here. There's John Bawalda getting his truck through. And here comes Gabriel. We see him get through turn 12 with pretty much relative ease, and then they come into this carousel area. Into this arena area, if you will. But the car's just out here making their laps, getting it done the way that they have to. This is absolutely mind-boggling to watch these drivers as we get our drone cam spun up here coming into the carousel. And we'll follow him with the chopper now, moving through toward the end of this lap. He comes through 19. He heads here for 20. And then we get to see him come through these final 2 corners. So, obviously, Lafreniere not about to be bothered here, as he now has an 8.4 second lead over Eugenio Alonso, who had led several laps this evening, as we are now 10 to go here. And with 10 to go, we're going to step aside and let you folks turn it up at home here on Sim Racing Media.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Welcome back to Austin, Texas. Dave Regal here in the Sim Racing Media broadcast booth, live in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. 6 laps to go now here at Circuit of the Americas in the Jack Dowel Simulators and eSports iRacing Truck Series. As Gabriel Lafreniere, your race leader, has a 6-second lead over Eugenio Alonso. So nothing but international contestants this evening up here atop the pile on what will be the podium once the checkered flag flies, as Eugenio Alonso out of Buenos Aires, Gabriel Lafreniere out of St. Jude, and Sylvain Jolly running in third. Jeremy Paris running in fourth right now. Brandon Minto rounding out the top 5. Then Claude Ferdland. Claude here in the Axon LED number 43, if you will. Oh, he nearly gets the 80 on that left rear quarter panel as we take a look at him. That can be frustrating as a driver, but right now, all eyes supposed to be on Gabriel Lafreniere, as he's got this F-150 cranked up pretty well, and he is hauling tonight. As now, even though that his race lead is shrinking, with 5 to go, I don't know if Eugenio Alonso has enough to get through here. Some things going on behind the scenes, if you will, while we were looking here at our race leader, Chris Custer, having himself an issue. Of course, the Ohio State Buckeye. We see him coming down the backstretch toward that treacherous turn number 12, as I'm sure all of these drivers going to be more than happy. And yeah, Custer just nearly getting pulled over there. Gangler here doing the same way. As he was navigating here through the S's. And we'll see if he catches a turtle. That's usually the killer here through the S's. He just nips that one. But it was enough to upset the truck, and he's got to get himself reset. And, you know, he brings it to a graceful rest, if you will, here on the paint. And there he sits. Interesting. Alexander, listen, the loud pedals on the right. You got to get moving, bud. As we get on back up here to our race leaders. Alexander Gangler having a pretty good night, running in 13th position, down 3 from where he had started the race. Is now dropping down significantly, as he may have put it on the hauler. We'll take a look here. Let's see if we can find Alexander. Hey, Alexander, it's Dave up in the booth. You get a copy? And he must have his radio switched off, as I can't hear him. I can't see him. So Alexander Gangler calling it a night here at COTA with now 5 to go. And folks, a little discussion going on here in our youtube.com live chat. And once again, if you haven't done so already, why haven't you subscribed, given us a thumbs up, turned on those bell notifications so that every time we go live here for Tuesday Night NASCAR Truck Series, and of course our Monday Night NASCAR Xfinity Series, Sunday Night Cup Series, get a notification every time we're going live. Check these drivers out at all 3 levels of stock car racing. But Dragon Zeron here wants to know if iRacing should add more classic tracks, and by classic tracks he means basically the Dale Jr. Lost Speedways, if you will. You know what? Yes. In fact, one that I would really like to see, just because it's a local track for me, would be Nazareth Speedway, of course, in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. Usually, we used to be taken care of by the Andretti family. And yeah, there are some classic tracks, and I think that's something that Dale Earnhardt Jr. is, let's just say, clandestinely trying to get, you know, onto the iRacing.com servers through his use of the Lost Speedways program over there on Peacock. And of course, if you don't have the Peacock app, make sure that you go into your App Store or Google Play and download the Peacock app. A lot of good programming over there, including Lost Speedways, you know, or Dinner with Kyle, as Kyle Petty's got himself a cool little show over there. And to be honest, I guess I'm drawn to people like Dale Jr. and Kyle Petty because they're the sons of two of the greatest racers to ever sit behind the wheel. And, to see what they do with their name, they've become stewards of the sport. They take care of what we love to see every Sunday, every Saturday, every Friday night. Those two guys, although they're retired from driving, have absolutely done great things post-driving career, if you will. Of course, you can hang out with both of them on Sundays on NBC. After the first half of the season completes itself and Fox passes the torch on over to NBC. Yeah, Dragon, Nazareth was quite an exciting place. Like I said, to me, that's one that I would really like to see them bring back. One that I'm sad to see go away in real life, but still maintain a life of its own here on iRacing, of course, is Myrtle Beach Speedway. I grew up in an era where Dale Earnhardt Jr. was coming up at about the same time that I was getting into NASCAR. As a young man hanging out in the firehouse, watching races on Sunday in the social quarters, and it was just really cool to watch Dale Jr. come along as I came along into watching NASCAR. And I really think Myrtle Beach Speedway would be great to have again. And you never know, there's always those quiet movements that's, a bunch of people with a bunch of money saying, yeah, we could reopen this track, kind of like they did with North Wilkesboro. Don't get me wrong, it's the people that have an affinity for those tracks that get that work done. Yeah, unfortunately, Dragon, I never got a chance to see a race over at Myrtle Beach, but it is, for some reason, one of my favorite tracks to race in the super late models here on the iRacing.com service. Just something really fun to watch. And speaking of fun to watch, peeking in here at Gabriel Lafreniere yet again, as he has a 6-second lead over Alonso. So that podium all but locked up, barring any kind of crisis. And I do agree that I think North Wilkesboro can be the start of something big, Dragon. NASCAR getting back to its roots in the Southeast. Yes, for a long time, you have to remember, NASCAR historically was a Southeastern sport, with maybe a couple of dribs and drabs up in Maine and New Hampshire. But, I think NASCAR getting back to its roots is almost like finding itself again. Kind of like, a kid that goes away to college and finds themselves, so to speak, or even an adult who goes through a major midlife change, being able to find themselves and find what made them successful and what brought them to prominence. As Eugenio Alonso's going into the pits. I don't understand this move at all, as he is now going to give up the podium almost for sure as the popsicle sticks are in the air. Let's see what's going on with Eugenio. What are you doing, buddy? Maybe just a quick splash of fuel? Quick splash of fuel for Eugenio as he pulls back out. He should be able to beat Sylvain Joly, but that will absolutely cement him into second position. Also, Jeremy Paris coming in on pit road. So Eugenio Alonso coming in for a splash of fuel with 2 to go. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, coming through turn number 10 is Gabriel Lafreniere. He manages to swing out of there with no problems at all and nobody around him. He comes down through here to the hairpin, works his way through, taking that a little wide just to the edge of that grass. And obviously he's using every bit of track that he needs to. But yeah, to get back to it, I think NASCAR getting back into the Southeast is a great thing. Let's be honest with ourselves as we see Lafreniere work his way closer and closer to the white flag. I think NASCAR, when they tried to get basically to turn themselves Hollywood, and make that West Coast swing out to Fontana, and of course now with the Coliseum. Don't get me wrong, the Coliseum is an interesting idea, but there's got to be a better place that we can hold that. I mean, good Lord. But, I mean, heck, they could probably do the same thing with the Cotton Bowl if they really tried. But, you know, I just think it's a great thing. And there's a lot of the grassroots movement that's going on right now. Of course, I see you talking about that, too, in the live chat. You know, the grassroots movement, there's always something to be said for that. And I think that's how NASCAR can stay true to itself, you know, as far as trying to be who it is. As the white flag is in the air, Gabriel Lafreniere going to cross the start-finish line. We are 1 to go. White flag waves. Now, Dragon, I don't know a whole lot about the international races, but, you know, obviously NASCAR having a big international impact as we have right now on the podium nothing but international contestants as Sylvain Joly, who has a 24-second lead over Jeremy Paris and just 4 seconds behind Eugenio Alonso, takes the white flag. We see Alonso coming through turn number 1 here up the hill. I don't think Joly is going to get him, so Eugenio finishing third last night, improving to second tonight. Probably could have brought home the checkered flag in another form, or maybe if, you know, as we always say, oh, if I would have had one more lap, I could have had him. If I would have had 2 more laps, I could have had him. And, you know, I don't know how many more laps it would have taken for Eugenio to try to get Gabriel Lafreniere, but these two drivers very evenly matched. They've run a very clean race together tonight. All 3 of these racers here atop the pile. As we see Gabriel Lafreniere one more time coming through turn 12, makes that swing nice and easy, as Francis Albert Sinatra would say, as the St. Jude native brings it on into the arena. Coming through the carousel one last time here. And I'll tell you what, Eugenio already on race radio congratulating Gabriel Lafreniere with a good win. As Gabriel Lafreniere comes out of the final turn, he can see the man in the stand with now the checkered flag in his hand. He stretches his legs out, coming down the front stretch, crosses the start-finish line, and Gabriel Lafreniere will win the Jack Dowel Simulators and eSports iRacing.com Truck Series here at Circuit of the Americas. We see Eugenio Alonso making his final turn out of the final turn, being followed by Sylvain Joly. Eugenio, the consummate professional, tipping his helmet visor to Gabriel. And of course, Gabriel's fellow countryman, Sylvain Joly, also up here on the podium. These 3 drivers going to line up for us. All nice and pretty, as we like to see. And Gabriel Lafreniere, burn them down because you have earned it. As we're waiting for the final cars to come off the track here, Still just a couple of drivers to go. As we see Dan Morgan and Chris Custer coming through here. Chris Custer crossing the start-finish line. That will wrap up his night. Chris Claude also finishing his evening. A good run from everyone tonight, I do have to say. It was quite an interesting evening, as we are going to get a chance to talk to Gabriel Lafreniere here. Gabriel, it's Dave Regal up in the broadcast booth. You got a copy?
Yes, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, sir?
Really, I'm fine.
I mean, listen, you ran one heck of a race tonight. You and Eugenio, it's nothing but international contestants tonight for us here on Tuesday Night NASCAR, and you really had a heck of a battle with Eugenio Alonso all night long, right up until the very end when, of course, pit strategies came into play. You know, how did that truck feel tonight?
The truck feel really nice, and the fuel just enough for one pit. So, man, the battle with Alonso was nice too, clean. So, yes, perfect night.
Definitely a perfect night for the 06 and the 08. Two teammates here on the podium, something that we don't get to see a whole lot of, but we're always excited to see. I mean, you know, it's always cool when I get to see guys that don't normally finish on the podium finish where you are. I mean, what was your mindset coming into tonight? You know, hitting your marks and just making it happen?
In the practice, I was second or third, so I'm confident with my time. And with the qualification, I done a really good lap. So yes, I was confident tonight. Yes, that was good.
All right, man. Well, listen, before we cut you loose tonight, is there anybody that you need to tip your helmet to before we cut you loose?
Can you repeat, please?
Is there anybody that you need to thank tonight for this run before we let you go here?
My teammates, Sylvain, Claude, Accent Led, and Oxmoor, my comments there. Oxmoor Beer.
So that is Oxmoor Beer. See, now, I got to be honest with you. I'm not really familiar with anything beyond Labatt's or Molson, so I guess I'm going to have to go out and find Oxmoor Beer. I was wondering what you were hauling there on your paint scheme.
The Oxmoor, it's in Quebec, so not sure in USA.
Listen,
but,
I am a I'm a beer hound. I will find it. I mean, you know, listen, you guys have some really great stuff north of the border. You've got, you know, Molson, Labatt's, and now Oxmoor. I can't really say too much for your Maple Leafs, though.
That's good. I'm from Montreal.
Oh, go Canadian. All right, man. Well, listen, congratulations on your first win here in the Truck Series this season, and we will see you next week over there at Texas.
Yes, sure. Thanks.
Thank you. And next up tonight is going to be Eugenio Alonso. Always great when we get to talk to somebody that we don't usually get to talk to. But what's even greater is when I get to talk to a good friend of mine in Eugenio Alonso. Eugenio, it's Dave up in the booth. You got a copy, man?
Hi, Dave. How are you?
Man, I'm good. I get to talk to you 2 nights in a row. Last night finishing third in the Xfinity Series. Tonight finishing second in the trucks. You're a monster, buddy.
This was a great week for me. I really enjoyed this race.
Well, you know, it's a good week for you, especially in both Xfinity and trucks. I mean, you know, you can when you're really good at road courses, and I've seen you race the road courses, you know, this is where you can capitalize. It's kind of like, you know, your teammate Tony Burt, who's able to really capitalize at super speedways. So this is your bread and butter here, and you've really proven that tonight. You know, how was the truck feeling? I saw you came in there with just a couple of laps to go for a splash of fuel. Were you running that close on fuel?
Yes, I don't have enough fuel, and I need to take another stop. I tried to say, but Gabriel did very well. He managed the fuel well in the first stint, he can make an extra lap in the first stint, and it make the difference.
It does make the difference, and we were talking about, whether or not a full tank of fuel was going to be the difference, especially keeping the truck stable. I mean, your truck was in perfect rhythm tonight from what I could see. You were hitting every mark the way that you had to, in and out. So, are you looking forward to when we go back road racing in a couple of weeks?
Yes, it was good for me. I get good points this week. This was a good opportunity to get the victory, but Gabriel was faster and with better strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at this point now you've got that confidence where you can run into these road courses and really pad the points, looking toward the playoffs. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know that as a broadcaster, I'm supposed to be neutral, but I got to be honest. I'm kind of pulling for Eugenio Alonso and just about all my friends over at JDM and Joe Gibbs. So, man, congratulations on this race. And as always, who do you need to thank before we let you go?
Thanks, David. I want to thanks to all JDM team and the sponsors, Nitro, Setups, as always. They give a great track for tonight. iRacing Flag and C Racing for mental care. And all guys of the team, thanks for him.
All right, man. Well, listen, we will see you next week. Of course, I'm going to see you Sunday night in Cup Series racing when we go to Richmond. We've got Richmond on Sunday and Monday, and then Tuesday you'll be in the trucks over at Texas Motor Speedway. So congratulations. Enjoy the podium finish, and I, sir, will see you Sunday night.
Thanks, man. See you. I hope to see you and talk to you next week.
All right, man. As always, the great Eugenio Alonso, and always glad to hang out with a good friend of mine. And, it's cool when you get to see the people that you're, even when as a competitor, that you're pulling for out here on the racetrack. And for the first time here on Sim Racing Media, we get to speak with the driver of the 08 Toyota Tundra, Mr. Sylvain Jolly. Sylvain, it's Dave up in the booth. You got a copy?
Yes, I'm copy. Hello, Dave. How are you?
Good. First off, am I pronouncing your last name right, Jolly?
Jolly is last name, yes.
All right, perfect.
Last name.
I watched just enough hockey that I thought I had it right, but I didn't want to butcher it too badly.
Hey. Yes, it's my first podium for this years. Mais Eugenio is very good driver. I want to push to go for the forward. And Eugenio, mais it's too bad. Mais Eugenio is very good driver. Puis good relation. Gabriel is no go to the pit. Me go to the pit for the gas.
Yeah, fuel mileage definitely coming down to a big deal here tonight. I mean, you came in last on lap 39 to take that splash of fuel, but you had quite a lead over Jeremy and Brandon Minto. So I got to be honest, I wasn't real worried about you. You definitely seemed pretty secure in third position.
Yes, I want my position is to take it. My gear is 389, tandis que for the Gabriel is 364. Fait que for and pass the more gas, and me on short pitting is pitting 2 laps to before. Fait que not possible to finish just one pit. Hey, sorry for my English, sir. I'm French Canadian, alors.
Trust me, I get it. I absolutely get it. You don't have to apologize for that at all. Trust me. But congratulations again. And before we let you go here, who do you need to thank for this run?
Thank you for my sponsor, Accent LED and Instadel.ca for the support for this season.
All right, brother. Well, listen, congratulations. We'll see you next week at Texas Motor Speedway here in the Truck Series. And I look forward to talking to you again if you get that checkered flag, okay?
Yes, I want to next week. Yes, and for go to the win, for go to the chase for the 10 driver. Hey, thank you, Dave, for the broadcast, and unless to you tomorrow for this. En tout cas, c'est ça.
All right, buddy. Listen,
Merci.
congratulations. I appreciate you very much, merci. And we will chat with you later.
Okay. Bye, Dave.
That was Sylvain Joly, who, of course, driving the 08 Toyota Tundra, ran a great race tonight. And I got to be honest, folks, he was out here really pushing hard. And we saw 3 international competitors tonight making it happen. And I can't get over that. You know, we've almost, I don't think that we've had that happen before. And just something very exciting here, especially on Sim Racing Media, especially, you know, for the Jack Dowel Motorsports and eSports Truck Series here on iRacing.com. And it's been an interesting evening, you know, from the green flag to the checkered flag. And, you know, it's at times like this where we kind of have to step back a moment and just appreciate what we just watched tonight after these 42 laps, which 42 doesn't sound like a whole lot of work, but it is for these drivers who practice week in and week out. And before we get on out of here, we're going to take a look here at the Jack Dowel Simulators eSports iRacing Truck Series final results here at COTA, the Circuit of the Americas. Gabriel Lafreniere, Eugenio Alonso, and Sylvain Joly make up your podium this evening, with Jeremy Paris finishing in 4th, Brandon Minto in 5th, Claude Ferdland, the only international driver not to get onto the podium tonight, but I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to get up there. Channing Ballou finishing in 7th, with John Bawalda, Rich Jett, and Chris Claude rounding out your top 10. McAdoo, Pennsylvania's very own John Wilco finishing the rolled gold Chevrolet Silverado in 11th position, with Brandon Loomis, Dan Morgan, Chris Custer, Alexander Gangler finishing out the cars that finished this race. Running yet with Steve Herring and Jeff O'Rourke putting it on the hauler early this evening. So 17 drivers took the green flag, 15 drivers take the checkered flag. And I'll tell you what, guys, this has been a great race to watch. You know, from start to finish, we saw all kinds of excitement, especially early on. And those top 3 drivers all night long were battling it out. You didn't see anybody really giving a whole lot of room. And Pit Strategy came in and just did what Pit Strategy does, and that is change the complexion of this race. So before we get on out of here, I want to thank everybody for making us a part of your evening here on Sim Racing Media. I'm Dave Regal, telling you that tomorrow, as you go through your day, find that happy moment and hang on to it, because a happy thought can make you fly. Good night, everybody.